am Alex Woodland, and today we are talking about chronic illness and how that affects our day-to-day life and our relationships with each other and with doctors and so on. So you have cued me in on some very interesting things. You have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and hyperpot. Was that?
Correct.
And what was your first indication that something was not quite right?
Just the constant aching, muscle soreness, pins and needles in my feet, and just feeling run down. I mean, I had two small children, but still I was more tired than I should have been. Just soreness and just not feeling like I should at the age of like late 20s, early 30s. And so that was my first clue, like, you know what, there's something going on here. I just don't feel right. Like I'm in constant pain all the time.
So yeah, that's a pretty big indication. So how was your journey taking that and communicating that to your doctors and coming to a diagnosis?
It was quite a difficult journey. A lot of it was on my own research, my own trying to figure out what was normal, what should I ask, what questions do I need to ask. I first started with my primary doctor, and he listened, but he said that I really don't know what's going on. I will refer you to a rheumatologist. The rheumatologist listened, said, we'll do blood work. Oh, everything's normal. Well, it looks normal. Must be fibromyalgia. But as time went on and other symptoms started flaring up, he kept on just saying, oh, it's a fibromyalgia. You need to work out more. You need to exercise more. You need to watch your diet more. Like, I am active. I do watch what I eat. Like, could it be this? Should we do this test? And fortunately, my primary doctor was really good. Whenever I needed a test done, he would do the tests for me. Because a lot of times my rheumatologist is like, oh, no, you're fine. We'll do the test every couple of years. But I just kept on pushing more. I would go into more forums, Facebook groups, ask questions there, see what other paths people had gone down, what blood tests and what other tests to go toward. And I started finding more and more about neuropathy. And that's when I asked my rheumatologist. He goes, I don't know. It could be, but I think it's just fibromyalgia. I'm like, it's 24/7. That's not normal, what I'm feeling. My feet are just constantly numb. It's spreading to my hands. I'm starting getting in my face now. My hands are swelling. They're turning bright red. My face is getting red more often. They did other blood tests. Nothing came back to show that there's a reason for it. So he did refer to me a neurologist who, again, oh, you're a woman. You're getting older in age. It's a fibromyalgia. It could be like hormones. It could be just your body adjusting to temperature. But I kept on pushing. I'm like, I want a skin biopsy done. And I remember he said, well, I don't know who does it, but call this number. And they didn't do it, so they rerouted me to somebody else. And that person didn't do it, so I had to make like multiple phone calls trying to figure out who exactly does the skin biopsy. Finally, I did find out exactly who it was. It was scheduled, and the results came back, but the doctor didn't even like tell me. He didn't call me. I just got a notification on my chart. And he said, oh, yeah, you do have small fiber neuropathy. Just take this medication, which I am allergic to gabapentin, and it's in my chart. And he wanted me to start taking Lyrica. And I'm like, we're not going to try and figure out what's going on or what's causing it. He goes, no, I don't think so. So I asked around who was the best person to go to in the Chicagoland area. And I was very fortunate to get into a doctor. And she was phenomenal. She listened. She's the one who said, yes, it is small fiber neuropathy. We did a whole battery of tests. We did genetic testing. We did autonomic testing. We did, you named it. She said, we'll try and figure out what's going on or what's causing it. She does have some theories. One of her theories is maybe antibiotics. But thankfully, because of her, she's the one who listened to me, was the first one who actually listened. It was kind of nice. And she's the one who diagnosed with fibromyalgia, the Raynaud's. But sadly, she is leaving. So I had to find another doctor. And there's another doctor who is an autonomic specialist in the area. There's a year and a half waiting list for him, but last month there was a cancellation, so I was able to get a televisit with him. And he actually listened. He said, your autonomic testing was not normal like I was told. It was hyperpot. He also listened to my family history and other issues I had, and he said that you do have the hypermobility. And I go actually there in 2 months to start doing more testing there and pursue more testing and hopefully figure out exactly what's going on with him. So it's been about a 10-year journey. It's been me pushing, me asking questions, me being a pain in the butt, sending lots of messages on my charts, and just advocating. I've been my biggest advocate. And that's what you have to be when you do have chronic conditions like this. You have to be your biggest advocate because doctors will not listen. I have a notebook that I just write things in as things happen. I record things. If I get tremors or other symptoms, I take pictures, document what's going on. This way I have proof. This way doctors can't say, oh, it's nothing. I'm like, no, I have evidence. I did see one there a few weeks ago, and she said that it was more because of stress in my life that's causing all this. And I'm like, no, if you have a very stressful job, you're a mother. Like, no, it's not that. I mean, things are actually pretty okay. I mean, I do have some stress, but not that much to cause all this.
Yeah, I remember the minute I was diagnosed with inappropriate sinus tachycardia, they're just like, well, your heart is running fast when it shouldn't. In the absence of, very obvious diagnoses, it's got to be anxiety and nothing else. And I'm just like, you're my cardiologist. You're supposed to be, more interested in why my heart rests at an insanely high rate. And I actually was diagnosed initially by a neurologist. And that was when I was in California. Then when I moved to the East Coast, it was my neurologist that I didn't like and the cardiologist that knows his stuff about POTS.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You gotta try and find the right doctor and ask for recommendations. I said originally it was inappropriate sinus tachycardia. My autonomic specialist was like, I don't know if it's that. It could be that. But at first, the ER is like, oh, it's stress. And yeah, I finally hear that everything's all stress. And I've been told, oh, you need to see your counselor more often. I'm like, I already see my counselor. I already talked to her. So I'm like, it's not that. I'm like, I already talked to somebody. My favorite is you need to work out. It's your diet. It's like, I work out 6 days a week. I try and stay active as much as I physically can. I've had to cut back a lot, but I still move a lot just to my ability. And so whenever doctors say you need to move, I'm like, I do. It's not stress. It's not from lack of like me not moving. So you need to come up with something else.
Yep. It's so funny. Like this is like almost. I mean, this is like very similar experiences across the board with most people with chronic illnesses. Um, so you talked a lot about stress, and most of us get sent to psych as you know uh, the minute things get complicated. They're just like, oh, the easy answer is it's stress. And I mean, it's a very easy thing to kind of like catch all that they can't explain because stress will exacerbate pretty much anything. And so if you have a legitimate thing and you're stressed that your doctors aren't listening to you, I mean, that's not helping anything at all. So they kind of play the chicken and the egg game. Oh, you're not feeling good because you're stressed. Where, you know, most of us generally feel, no, 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 I'm stressed because I'm not feeling good and I'm not getting help. And so it's that circular argument with doctors that I've had a lot. Um, have you felt the same way or?
Yes, like I said, it was kind of funny and sad. Like I saw a movement specialist, and she was the one who said, "Oh, you're a teacher this year, so things are really stressful." And I kind of looked at him like, "Actually, no, I'm not stressed this year with teaching. I've been very fortunate where my job's been letting me work from home, so I've been remote teaching. I've been able to relax, not relax, but just not have to worry about being in pain in front of students all day. So I'm not stressed at all this year. This is like the first year of teaching there. I'm not stressed. So it's not my job." And she's the one who kept them pushing. It's stress, it's stress, it's stress. In fact, she said that a lot of my issues are the functional tremors due to stress. And I've heard she said kept on repeating it over and over again, and I just walked out of there just frustrated. And like I said, I do know that when I'm stressed, my symptoms do flare up, and my neurologist and I have talked about that. But I also, like I said, do have a counselor who I do talk to, and we talk about ways of managing my stress and how to deal with it. And this way I don't go around that big circle of just like stress, stress, flare up. And so it is just frustrating when doctors do say, "Oh, it's stress," and you're like, "No, it's not. You're not listening to me. I know my body. I know the symptoms."
It sounds like you finally do have a doctor that listens well, and that's, that seems to be key.
It is, yes, it is. As I say, like I said, my main neurologist is leaving, so, but her PA's been really good. But I am transitioning to the new doctor, the autonomic specialist, just because my symptoms kind of fall under the umbrella a little bit more than just like neurologists. It's more the autonomic umbrella, as they would call it. So switching to him, but he's the one who even said to me, he goes, "No, it is not stress. Stress may kind of flare it up or make it worse, but it's not what's causing all this. Stress is not causing your blood pressure to rise when you go from laying down to standing. It's
Yeah.
not stress."
Have you felt that your insurance situation has affected your care at all, for better or worse?
I've been very, very fortunate. I have found that I do not like HMOs, so even though we'll pay a little bit more, we've always stayed away. So I've been lucky to have a regular insurance where I'm able to go wherever I want. The only downside is that 80% coverage does not really cover a lot sometimes. So medical bills, I have to kind of be careful, like, okay, do I really want to pay this much for another MRI and other testing? They do cover they have covered everything to an extent. It's just what they don't cover has kind of piled up. And like I say, it does make me kind of decide, do I want this or do I really need this test done? Because I know I'm going to have to meet my deductible or it's not going to cover everything. So it has kind of paused. When I did the genetic testing, I was very fortunate. It was part of another trial of a genetic test. So this way my insurance didn't have to pay for it. So I got lucky that way. Otherwise, it would have been very, very expensive, and I would not have been able to do it. So I was fortunate that way, but it does make me question, do I really need this test or not? Which is kind of sad. I mean, I'm lucky that I do have insurance, but I still have to yes or no, or hold off on medication right now. Like I always till payday because I know my insurance is not going to cover the full amount for this medication, or I have a lot of medications coming in at the same time. So we need to kind of hold off a few days until I get paid. So.
Yeah, I'm very glad you were able to get things covered. I personally have an HMO, and there are doctors that will just say, no, as far as we're concerned, this treatment test, whatever, just does not exist. And even my doctors have said, she needs this. My patient, Alex Woodland, meets all the criteria for needing a wheelchair. And they wouldn't even cover a wheelchair. And it's ridiculous. And so like with PPOs, you kind of have to do all the footwork yourself, trying to figure out like it's a full-time job trying to manage figuring out like what specialists you can see and what you can't. And with an HMO, all that is done for you, but then they could just tell you no. Just straight up no. I lost your picture for a second. Oh no. Are you still with me?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to navigate this insurance minefield almost. But there, I even once called a patient advocate, and it was an independent patient advocate. I could call for advice for free, and basically all they said was get better insurance and do all the footwork to find out what they cover and what they don't. And if they don't cover what you need, get even better insurance. And I'm like, we're paying more than we can afford as it is, just for premium. And it's, sorry, I'm, it's hard not to get on my own soapbox because I feel you.
Well, it's frustrating. I mean, I was fortunate that my husband we were underneath my husband's insurance, which was phenomenal insurance. But he got let go from his job, so I was able to get my insurance, thankfully. But it's still very expensive every month, and I said they only cover 80%, which I'm still better than nothing. But when you have all the tests, MRIs, blood tests, like blood tests has got to be sent to a certain lab across the country. And
you get 5 different bills for a single thing. I spent 2 years on a PPO, and I'm like, never again, because I couldn't even figure out what I owed, let alone make sure I paid it.
Exactly. Like, oh, okay, then I'm gonna get this bill in, and and then trying to worry about meeting your deductible, especially at the beginning of the month. You're always like, oh God, here we go again. And I kind of wait till the end of the year to try and get as much stuff as you can, which is kind of sad, trying to like time like what you get and when you get stuff done.
Yeah. Sorry. I had something in my head and it doesn't. That's the, that's the brain fog for you.
I know. I know. I just started new medication yesterday, and so I'm still kind of just like, okay, is it the medication or is it everything else? So it's like, what's going on here? So.
Oh, it's a little late in the game for this, but would you mind explaining to Twitch and YouTube what Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is and what POTS and hyperPOTS is?
I'm still learning all this stuff myself, but basically the Ehlers-Danlos is like hypermobility. I don't have like all the symptoms, but a lot of it is like they skin can stretch, like they have. I used to be a little bit more flexible, but as a small child, I was able to put both legs behind my head. As I do those little party tricks. I used to be able to pretty much bend my fingers close to my wrist. So basically, your joints move in some really weird ways that are not normal.
Okay, we are back. I apologize.
Oh, that's all right. I'm in a bunker, so. Yeah, so the Ehlers-Danlos is hypermobility. Joints move in some weird ways that leads to a lot of like that muscular pain, joint pain, and that's where my doctor kind of thinks that I was first diagnosed with fibromyalgia in the very beginning, but it was more the hypermobility that the doctors never really thought to look at. I have what's called hyperPOTS, which is more the rarer version of POTS, but POTS is where, if I'm recalling correctly, their heart rates tend to drop. That's the most common version where the heart rates kind of like drop when people go from sitting to standing or moving around, and they have been known to pass out. Hyperpods, which I have, when I go from laying down to standing, my blood pressure will jump up, and I'm usually in a tachycardic state. The way my doctor explained it is also I have too much adrenaline in my system. So I'm almost in that constant like fight or flight mode. So I'll have like these little adrenal dumps or just surges where I get really antsy. I'm going to throw up and get jittery. I get really flushed, and it just feels like something. You're almost like in a horror scare movie, and you never know when it's going to happen. It's happened a few times at work, and I've had to like leave the classroom because I thought I was going to pass out or just something was just not right. And my students would even say to me like, "Miss, your face is like bright red. What's going on? Are you okay?" And I had no idea what was going on at the time, but now that I know what exactly is going on, it makes more sense of all the symptoms that have been going around for years. And so it's just almost like your body's in that like fight or flight mode, which do not recommend.
Yeah. When I first, POTS and hyperPOTS are a specific type of autonomic dysfunction. And the way my neurologist, the first one who diagnosed me, explained autonomic dysfunction is there's kind of like a biofeedback loop where your autonomic nervous system sends signals to your organs to do certain things, and then those organs send signals back. So your brain will tell your heart, okay, let's beat at an appropriate at an appropriate pace, okay? And then the heart is supposed to be, okay, got it. I am beating at an appropriate pace. And then the brain says, okay, got it. Keep it going. And this loop continues forever. But something is wrong in that process with autonomic dysfunction. So the brain kind of sits there saying, okay, I've sent a message to the heart and I'm not getting the right message back. So I'm going to shout this message. I'm going to, send twice as many messages. And then it kind of tries to compensate for that break in the feedback loop in various ways. And that depends on if you get POTS, hyperPOTS, or any of the myriad of things that can go wrong. So, like my mom, my sister, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother all had weird, unexplainable symptoms. And I was actually the first person in my family to get diagnosed. And then I had to, go back up the family tree going like, Mom, Grandma, you've got to test for, autonomic dysfunction and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because I think that's what was up with great-grandma.
And it's exactly what I was saying with my sister. My doctor was asking about my family. Like, well, my sister growing up was always able to put her hands, like her legs behind her head and walk on her hands and just other weird joint issues. And she still has joint issues now, but he goes, yes, a lot of it just does run in the family. And my daughter's has some weird, quirky joint flexibility stuff too. Nothing extreme right now, so we're kind of keeping an eye on it. But they also have some minor issues, but it is hereditary, so we're keeping a close eye on them to see if anything really major flares up.
Yeah. It's funny how it seems to be the rule rather than the exception to actually run in a family, and to the point where, like, sometimes in our support group, some people think it's weird. Like, I don't know anyone else that has this. But I'm also watching my children like a hawk. And I've already taken my daughter to a geneticist. And since she's only 8, a lot of the symptoms can just be chalked up to the fact that she's young. But she's had like 6 major joint injuries already. And for an 8-year-old, that's just not okay.
No, exactly. When I was like looking back, I mean, I was talking to my mom and I was saying, like, remember all the times that I twisted, sprained, broke my ankle probably at least 14 times before I was like 16. She's like, well, yeah, you're kind of klutzy. I'm like, no, that's not normal. That was not a normal experience. I mean, my ankle was constantly in a splint or some sort of cast or something. And it was back then like, oh, you're klutzy, or you're just flexible, or you're just chalked up to something else besides what it turns out to be. And I have found that just looking back, there's always an explanation for all these symptoms until finally someone puts all these pieces together.
So this has been absolutely wonderful this far. And before we go, is there an additional thing? Oh, one question I always like to ask is, you mentioned you were a teacher, and that's great. Very noble occupation. What are your hobbies? What kind of things do you do for fun?
In the past, I was a very avid strength athlete, but sadly, as my body has kind of just gotten older and just things have kind of flared up more, and that's the thing that I've noticed more of my symptoms are kind of overtaking my life, but I still work out as much as possible. Before things got really bad, I was a competitive strongwoman. So I would compete in competitions, and that was my true love. So now I more or less volunteer. So I'm still involved as much as I can, but between my working, my children, um, volunteering, I also enjoy just reading, and also with everything that's going on, just trying to find more information. That's the biggest thing, to be your biggest advocate, and there's always new research coming out, and there's always new studies. And my husband is a tech person, so he has a AI system set up for me. So whenever there's any new articles set up about anything that's going on, I get notified so I can read them. But so reading, volunteering, teaching, being physically active as much as possible. Those are the things I try and do in my little spare time that I have.
Great. Now, is there anything that you would like to share that I haven't touched on today?
I just think that in today's day and age, you have to be your own advocate. You have to do your research, and don't let doctors think that they know everything. Yes, they have gone to medical school, but they do not know everything. They do not know how you feel. They do not know how you live. So it's up to you to speak up. And if you don't feel comfortable, find someone that you care about to even go with you to be that second set of ears. Because there's been many times where I thought I heard something that a doctor said, and my spouse will speak up and say, no, that's not how it is. So you need to be your own advocate, and also have a good support system around you, whether it's online or people around you. That's the only way you will get through all this, is to find some sort of support system. And thankfully, with the online system, there's so many groups out there that I was not even aware of, and I'm glad for that. Otherwise, I don't think that I would be getting through everything.
That's great. I actually kind of felt the need to train my husband to advocate for me. Not that he wasn't supportive, because he 100% is. He's just more of the, you've got this, go, you're independent type of support. And I've had to teach him that there's a big difference between me telling a doctor who isn't listening to me, hey, you need to listen. It really is as bad as I say. And my husband saying, hey, you really need to listen. I see that it's as bad as my wife says. It's a world of difference. If I, get prissy with a doctor, or if my husband does on my behalf. Like, growing up, my mother was the big support. Like, she was always the, the advocate for me and my sister. Like, she would butt heads with doctors all the time.
I said, my husband's phenomenal, and I mean, he's great. But in the beginning, his thing is that he wanted to solve everything. So he wanted to fix everything. I'm like, you're not going to be able to fix this. I mean, I know you want to, but there's really no fixing this. Like, you can't. Doctors can maybe help, but you're not going to be able to fix it. So that has been a learning experience for him, too, that he's not going to be able to solve all my health issues.
Right. We're always going to have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And we're probably always going to have POTS. The key is proper management. And
Exactly.
that's the goal, is to keep these chronic conditions, well managed. Because if they knew as much about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and POTS as they did about diabetes, for an example,
Mhm.
we'd be in a much better situation if they were as comfortable managing them.
And it's one thing that I always have said to other like females too. Like I feel like if I was a male, that I would have been listened to a lot sooner and taken seriously a lot sooner. And that's one thing that I found that a lot of times doctors are very dismissive if you are a female, especially if you are a mother. Like, oh, it's stress. It's you have children. It's exhausting. You're getting older, and I don't hear that when they say it to my husband. If my husband complains or has any health issues, they don't say that to him. Oh, you're a father. You have children. It's stress.
Yeah, it's a big double standard, and there are doctors who are working to kind of improve that, and bless those doctors.
Yes.
Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me and just, I mean, also helping me learn more and more about exactly what's going on, like in the world of dysthymia and autonomic neuropathy, just because it's still new to me and I'm still trying to figure things out. And it's just,
Well,
there's so much else to know about.
absolutely. So, I'm going to put this on YouTube tomorrow, and I will update the I will update the there goes that brain fog again. I will update the support groups and post the link. And
Okay, sounds good.
thanks again. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Bye bye.